ACW is sponsored by Jabati. Self-care through skincare. Jabati is for everybody. Thank you for joining ACW Podcast. Welcome, audience. Thank you for being here with us today. I am Robin Gabriel-Parson, your host. It is November, and throughout the month of November, we have been discussing diabetes and culture. This is Diabetes Awareness Month, and we have been so blessed to have amazing co-hosts to come and chime in on the conversation and provide some needed information and resources. Our topic is diabetes and culture. Now today, our co-host is Dr. Vernette. She's the owner of Vernette Health Systems. She's an advocate for women's health, and she's an author of Piece of the Pie. We honor and thank everyone in the fight for social justice. Teachers, healthcare workers, and all of you in high-risk jobs. We know it's stressful, so we have a gift of thanks from us to you. For more information, visit jaboti.com. That's JABOTIBODY.com. You're listening to ACW Podcast. I am Robin Gabriel-Parson, your host, and our co-host today is Dr. Vernette with Vernette Health Systems. November is Diabetes Awareness Month, and we have been discussing diabetes and culture. Diabetes affects people of all ages, backgrounds, and ethnic groups. But most of all, the alarming effects diabetes have on the body is devastating, from the skin to the mouth. On our podcast today, we will focus on diabetes and childbirth. Now, there are a large number of pregnant women diagnosed with diabetes. Not just type 1 and type 2, but this particular diabetes is labeled as gestational diabetes. Now, we have with us today co-host Dr. Vernette to share with us the effects gestational diabetes have on the mother and the unborn child. Vernette, please share with us, give us a little more about your journey within the health and wellness industry.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Vernette, and I started my, journey as a women's advocate pretty early on in my adulthood when I became a mother at 21, and I wasn't really aware of all of the options for maternal care and support, and even postpartum care and support. And so I find that with a lot of moms out here present day that are experiencing the lack of support, I can resonate with their experience. And so when I became a mom at 21, I was still in school, gaining my bachelor's and trying to juggle motherhood. And at the time I was a new wife and, still a college student. So I had a lot of hats that I was trying to figure out how to wear. And so it really wasn't until fast forward, I was a mother of two at the age of 25. I had just gained my second degree. I was working full time and I was a mom of two, still trying to juggle all of those hats. And, I found that at this point in my life, I was really trying to figure out who I was. Who was this person raising two humans that were watching? And so I started to dig a little bit deeper into, the education component of what I was currently into, which is health and wellness. My undergrad is in psychology and my master's is in exercise science and health promotion, with a concentration in performance enhancement and injury prevention. So at the time, I was really gravitating towards special populations. And I've always loved special populations because we're special. And so
Mm-hmm.
special populations includes, and is not limited to, but includes geriatrics, so older people, younger people, so pediatrics, um, athletes, those who are in rehabilitation, and my most favorite is pregnancy and maternal care. And so even though at the time I was really heavy into athletes because I was working at a fitness club and a fitness and wellness club, and that's kind of what our focus was, I really gravitated toward pregnancy. I was in school in my chiropractic program, and this friend of mine who I actually partner with currently now in several different projects and organizations was heavy into maternal care and building a birth center local to Georgia, which is now established as the Atlanta Birth Center. And so, studying with her and then also seeing her and wanting to support her in her initiative and supporting her story as a mother, we really started having more in-depth conversations about maternity care and what did it look like to support moms, whether they were wanting to conceive, dealing with infertility issues, they were in the midst of their pregnancy, or they had birth and now are in the chapter of postpartum. And, when you have been pregnant, after the birth of your baby, whether the baby is, birthed alive, or the mom experiences miscarriage or a stillborn, we're all moms, after the initiation of pregnancy. So if we're all moms after the initiation of pregnancy, then we're all in this postpartum journey together, and there really is no expiration to postpartum. And so when we started to having more in-depth conversations about what we could do to advocate for maternal care, and that includes maternal mental health, that's when I really started to get more in depth with research about the lack of postpartum support and the lack of Black maternal support. And so fast forward present day, a lot of the projects that I work on and the collaborations that I'm involved with are heavily surrounded around women's health, specific to maternal care. So how I got here, as passionate as I am, there was a specific chapter in my life where I served as a gestational carrier, which means that I carried life for a family a couple seeking to build a family. And so they utilized their own sperm, and they had egg donors. And so I gestationally carried a pair of twins. And that experience really was an unfolding of who I meant to be and how I meant to show up. And so that whole journey has really just unpacked so many topics that surround the deficiencies in support for women's health and maternal health. So, so me coming into this space has been such a rewarding experience for me, because I'm able to utilize the education that I've already gained on a generalized, perspective, and really start to specialize it towards women's care and advocacy programs and support platforms, and helping women and birthing people to find their voice in what that looks like in becoming a mom, and the challenges of motherhood, but also the triumphs of motherhood. So creating different programs, health promotion programs, which is part of my master's, has been something that I've been wanting to be a part of for such a long time. But honestly, I've been just scared to move forward And so now we're surpassing the fear, and we're digging our nails into the dirt, and we're planting and growing. So that just brings us kind of to the present day and to this conversation of gestational diabetes.
We honor and thank everyone in the fight for social justice. Teachers, healthcare workers, and all of you in high-risk jobs. We know it's stressful, so we have a gift of thanks from us to you. For more information, visit jabodibody.com. That is JABODIBODY.com. You're listening to ACW Podcast. I am Robin Gabriel-Parson, your host, and our co-host today is Dr. Vernette with Vernette Health Systems.
And let me just add, everything you just shared through your journey, and you're so young, but you have been through a lot, and I'm so impressed with your journey. And what you experienced with us. And what really brought me to really reaching out to you and like, I got to have her on this podcast is because of what you just explained. The fact that you was a part of a surrogate experience. The fact that at a very young age, you were experiencing motherhood and advocating for women's health. And just for me to add a little personal transparency in this, and I do believe I shared this with you, having a child at 45 years old and actually going through postpartum after having this child and having episodes and reaching out looking for specialists or people to talk to have some understanding of what's going on with my body or what, and even from a woman of color, a Black woman, being in Georgia, looking for someone who specialized in postpartum when it dealt to Black women and mental health. That was something that I was faced with after having my child at 45 and experiencing postpartum, and not just postpartum, but postpartum psychosis. So that's a whole nother level. So when I heard and you started, we connected back, through our journey, and you shared this with me, I'm like, oh my goodness, I really need you to come and have this conversation with me. You experienced it, you understand, you are dealing with mothers, you're a doula mother. You've really took your experience and applied it, and not just within a professional level, I mean, grassroots community. So I really appreciate that about you. So with that said, because I actually, being pregnant at 45, was diagnosed. I was on the edge of being diagnosed, of having gestational diabetes. My feet were swelling. Just a lot was going on. And I really would like you to kind of share with our audience, our listeners, why does that occur? I know it had a lot to do with my diet too, but and then the fact that I was at risk, 45, having a baby. So, so Dr. Vernette, please share more with us in reference to diabetes of women who are carrying, and how does that affect the child? And first of all, I would like the audience to first understand what is gestational diabetes. Can you kind of, elaborate on that?
Yeah. So just kind of an overview of gestational diabetes. So when you look at diabetes talks about how it talks about your blood and the sugar components that are in the blood, right? So there is a blood sugar issue that's going on with the body when you talk about diabetes. And there's different types of diabetes. You've got type 1 that talks about or that deals with the pancreas, whether it's producing too much or too little insulin. And when we use the word insulin and glucose, which is another word for sugar, they have a relationship. And insulin is a hormone that helps the glucose get into your cell and give your cells energy, right? So if we're like really, really fatigued, then one of the reasons why, people who are pre-diabetic, meaning their numbers in their labs are showing that they're trending towards, becoming at risk for diagnoses of diabetes, that the energy component is huge in glucose, because glucose is one of the components that allow a body to have energy, allow your muscles to function, your brain to function. Brain needs glucose for your body to function, and your blood is everywhere. Your blood is everywhere in your body. So imagine if you have a level of deficiency in the blood, which is all over your body, then you're going to have global effects, different things that are going to happen in your body. That's not just, singular to one organ. It's going to be what we call a systemic condition. So when you have type 1 diabetes, which I just explained, it has to do with the pancreas not producing an adequate amount of insulin that helps the glucose, to go into the blood for energy. Your type 1 talks about the insulin not having enough, not having, it's having a deficiency with it. So I actually just said that. But when we talk about type 2 diabetes, you have type 1 and we have type 2, you have an issue with the actual glucose. And so when a person is pre-diabetic, how can you tell if a person is pre-diabetic? Well, a person can be pre-diabetic if their blood sugar is high, they've got too much glucose in their blood, meaning they're consuming way too much sugars. And glucose is kind of broken down into a simple sugar. But if we're not taking care of our diet and what we put in our body, then our body's not able to process all of that junk that we're putting in our body. And so then we have these type of effects that are detrimental. Gestational diabetes is specific to pregnant women. Gestational is when you are creating life, right? It's creation, right? Gestation, you're creating. And then, of course, we're talking about diabetes. So when a birthing person is diagnosed or at risk of gestational diabetes, that's a specific time in their birthing experience where it is a form of high blood sugar that is affecting a pregnant woman. Okay. So if we're just kind of like breaking it down, that's diabetes. It talks about blood sugar, dysfunction in blood sugar. So when you ask the question, like, what happens when a pregnant woman or a birthing person, nowadays we want to be more mindful of our verbiage. So a birthing person is diagnosed with diabetes. That means that, their blood sugar at that time of gestation is way too high. And it can cause different effects during the pregnancy, and it can affect the baby's health. So, yeah, it can have lasting effects it can be immediate effects, but then also lasting effects for both mom and baby. And so, when you first get pregnant, you got the pregnancy test, and then you have, confirmation of pregnancy. One of the things that you want to be looking for as far as symptoms, like when to actually see a doctor, is they'll check they'll do different assessments, but if you're developing gestational diabetes, you'll be the clinician will be able to kind of track what that looks like. And so most likely it'll be during the last 3 months of the pregnancy, that the doctor will really start looking at blood sugar. Now, if you're coming into your pregnancy journey already at risk or pre-diabetic, right, you already have high blood sugar, and they take labs. That's how they're able to assess what your levels are, if they're within normal limits or not. The spike in blood sugar usually happens or is diagnosed in the latter part of your pregnancy, like I said, the last 3 months. And really the causes of it, like I said, it's the blood sugar levels. You're looking at blood sugar levels, you're looking at hormone level changes, again, blood work. And it's making it harder for the body to process the sugar that's being put into their body. Because when you eat food, your food is broken down, right? We typically experience the elimination process, right? You're pooping, you're peeing. But what happens when you have too much sugar that's left in your body? You're talking about swelling of your feet. Well, that's part of it, because your body is retaining all of the toxins that come from the lifestyle that you live and the nutrition that you are, nourishing yourself with. And so some of the risk factors of gestational diabetes can include a birthing person that's overweight or obese, right? If they're not utilizing physical exercise, if they're not active and they live more of a sedentary lifestyle, if they are in their subsequent pregnancies, maybe they had gestational diabetes beforehand, or maybe they came into their pregnancy journey pre-diabetic. There is a syndrome that's called polycystic ovarian syndrome, where you have poly means many and cystic means cysts, or a vesicle. And so you have many different vesicles around your ovaries where your eggs are stored. And there's a host of signs and symptoms that come with PCOS, and that's polycystic ovarian syndrome. Another risk factors is diabetes runs in your immediate family. And so, yes, it's a hormone thing, but it's also a lifestyle thing. So I tread carefully when I talk to people about, diabetes running, using that word running in the family, because yes, we do have DNA and our memories are in our DNA, and that is definitely a part of the conversation. But what's bigger is changing your lifestyle. We can reverse, in certain conditions, we can reverse diabetes, right? Or at least manage it to the point where it doesn't, become something that is detrimental during your pregnancy journey. So, that is one of the risk factors, is it running, it meaning diabetes running in the immediate parts of your family, right? Mother, father, brother, sister. And in the previous pregnancy, maybe if a birthing parent has delivered a baby that weighed over 9 pounds, so it's a bigger baby. Usually babies weigh around 7 pounds on average. If you have a larger baby, you could be at risk for gestational diabetes. And another thing is Black, American Indian, Asian American, and Pacific Islanders, and those of like a Hispanic descent, are at a significantly higher risk of gestational diabetes. So basically non-white ethnicities are at a higher risk. And so you want to be mindful of these things when we're having these conversations with our birthing clients, to make sure that they're at least aware of them being at a higher risk for experiencing gestational diabetes.
We honor and thank everyone in the fight for social justice. Teachers, healthcare workers, and all of you in high-risk jobs. We know it's stressful, so we have a gift of thanks from us to you. For more information, visit jabodibody.com. That is JABODIBODY.com. You're listening to ACW Podcast. I am Robin Gabriel-Parson, your host, and our co-host today is Dr. Vernette with Vernette Health Systems.
You had asked in the second part of your question, like, what does it look like for for baby? Like, how does this affect your
Right.
baby? Well, moms and birthing parents or birthing people who have been diagnosed with gestational diabetes, they could have, they're going to have excessive birth weight. And so if you have excessive birth weight and you have gestational diabetes, that can cause your baby to grow. And so when you're birthing these very large babies that are weighing 9 pounds or more, they're more likely to be stuck or wedged in the birth canal, and there's a higher risk of birth injuries, or the necessity for a cesarean birth.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Uh,
Another thing is a preterm labor, preterm birthing, because high blood sugar can increase the birthing person's risk for delivering early. And, so that's how doctors are able to kind of monitor the labs to see if that's part of the conversation of being on standby for an early delivery. When babies are born from a parent that has gestational diabetes, the baby may experience respiratory issues, and they call it respiratory distress syndrome, that can cause difficulty with breathing. We talked about diabetes having to do with blood sugar. So some babies can be born with low blood sugar, which is hypoglycemia, just immediately after birth. And so if you're having really, really low blood sugar, you're having low energy. And I talked just a little bit, I skimmed that blood sugar has to do with muscle activation as well, or it goes into your muscle tissue. If you have a really, really low, or into your organs, I'm sorry. If you have really low blood sugar, the baby is at a higher risk of having seizures.
oh, wow.
Yeah. So that is something that can be a very scary experience and can have long-term effects over time when, an infant is having a seizure. And then just some other things is, obesity and type 2 diabetes later on in life, where, the child born from a mom that has gestational diabetes. Now that's where you're talking about running in the family. That's when it's, for me, okay to say, yes, it runs in your family. Because maybe if your mom experienced gestational diabetes, with you, then you would be at a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes and or having obesity as, part of your risk factors later on in life. And then the unfortunate thing is that sometimes if gestational diabetes is not treated, the baby can be born, not alive, and
Wow.
or could pass away shortly after birth, right? So a stillbirth child.
Wow.
So it's something that is a huge topic of conversation, especially among white ethnic groups. Some complications that the mom can have is high blood pressure, and preeclampsia, and they would be at a higher risk for cesarean, just because of the way that the body's responding to gestational diabetes, that they could have future pregnancies that they're at risk for gestational diabetes as well.
We honor and thank everyone in the fight for social justice. Teachers, healthcare workers, and all of you in high-risk jobs. We know it's stressful, so we have a gift of thanks from us to you. For more information, visit jabodibody.com. That is JABODIBODY.com. You're listening to ACW Podcast. I am Robin Gabriel-Parson, your host, and our co-host today is Dr. Vernette with Vernette Health Systems.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
That,
yeah.
that's Vernette, you have shared so much. And I'm listening, and as you share, you're triggering so many thoughts in my head. And one in particular was something you brought up about seizures and uh, babies and just people growing into adults and still having seizures. Um, so it kind of gives you a sense of this diabetes really attacks your body in a way that it can really off balance the function of your body. So it's kind of like this crazy disease could really put you in a place of a life or death situation if only you had information in reference to how to eat. It simply is like your nutrition, your whole way of you taking care of your body, and it starts with the mother. I asked about the unborn child, and as I'm listening to you talking about the effects and what this child is faced with, it kind of gives me a sense of wow. Is it really fair for the unborn child to have already be diagnosed with different disease, and they're not even here yet? So how do we help our mothers? What advice do we give our mothers during let's say prenatal and postnatal, when it comes to care, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to taking care of your body, if you really want to have that healthy baby? Also, what I found interesting, what you were saying in reference to people said runs through the family, or you have this genetics. But you can stop that. There is a point where you can cut that off and create a whole nother lifestyle cycle for this new baby just by understanding nutrition
Yeah.
and the importance of exercise. And like you said, sugar is part of what glucose is what we need. It produces energy. But I think people really need to understand and I can, the term that says good fats and bad fats.
Yeah.
But it's almost like even when it comes to sugar too, like I don't think any sugar is good, but at the same time, having that understanding of nutrition. So my question to you, with all that said, my question to you is, what advice would you give a young mother in reference to taking care of her body during her prenatal and her postnatal stage of pregnancy?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, it's really straightforward, and a lot of things you already kind of skimmed over, which is nutrition. So eating healthy foods, choosing foods that are high in fiber and low in fat and calories, and focusing on consuming fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and then watching the portion size of what you're consuming. The complementing the nutrition component is staying active, right? So exercising even before you get pregnant, exercising while you're pregnant, and that can help protect you from developing gestational diabetes. Although there's no guarantee whether you can whether it is completely preventable, right? Because we talked about what runs in the family and or maybe the genetic makeup of that particular birthing person. But if you can be proactive, right? That's a really great word to use, proactive, about the intention of making sure that you're consuming healthy foods and you're staying active. And some things that can help with staying active is, aiming for 30 minutes of moderate, so not intense, but not so relaxed where you're not really gaining any type of, physical distress or physical stress, right? Not distress, but eustress would be good. On the body, you can take brisk walks. You can ride a bike. You can go swimming. I love, love, love telling my pregnant clients about the beauty of getting in the pool, because it's a natural resistance environment. So you're getting kind of this resistance training. So it's working your muscles, and it's also working your cardiovascular system, as well as making sure that you're at least doing something active just in general. And I mean, who doesn't want to just play in the water, right?
Right.
So staying active there. Start your pregnancy at a healthy weight. Make sure that if you are planning to be pregnant, which I think that even just the concept of planning is a really good conversation to have with your SO. and or with your birthing team, if you're birthing as a single independent person, that you are intentional about what does your status look like. Status meaning, what is my mental health? What is my physical health? What is my spiritual health? What is my emotional health? What are those statuses prior to creating this family plan? So that way I can enter this chapter of pregnancy at optimal levels. So when you're planning to have these conversations with your SO or with your wellness birthing team, those are some really good components that are comprehensive to your well-being. And then lastly, I would say when you're pregnant, stay within the normal limits of weight gain. Try not to gain more weight than what's recommended, because if you're gaining weight way too quickly, you really would, a birthing person would be at a higher risk, honestly, of gestational diabetes. And so the weight distribution or the weight gain recommendation will be per whatever your genetic makeup is, and that's where your physician will come into the conversation and give that birthing person advice.
We honor and thank everyone in the fight for social justice. Teachers, healthcare workers, and all of you in high-risk jobs. We know it's stressful, so we have a gift of thanks from us to you. For more information, visit jabodibody.com. That is JABODIBODY.com. You're listening to ACW Podcast. I am Robin Gabriel-Parson, your host, and our co-host today is Dr. Vernette with Vernette Health Systems.
Wow. Thank you so much. You've shared so much with us today. I truly appreciate all of your information. Dr. Vernette, my listeners who may want to contact you for additional information or just want to follow you, can you just share with us some of your platforms? If any questions the listeners may have, I can direct them straight to you. But please give us more information about where you are, how we can contact you, and if especially pregnant women or women in general need a mentor or someone who's in the field to direct them, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. They can get in touch with me online. My website is drvernette.com. I'm on social media on Instagram, again, at Dr. Vernette. And so they can contact me either on the social media of Instagram. They can contact me through my website. There is a particular area on my website that gives my contact information. And so, there are so many different resources that we have available in our communities. It's just opening up that conversation and that dialogue for those who need it to be able to reach out and for us to support them on an ongoing basis. So I'm here for support, for advocacy, for education, and just overall knowledge of how to live and own your own health.
Thank you. And what is really, really interesting and very important right now with the climate we're in, we need to protect our health. We need to take charge of our health. We have this COVID-19 that is really attacking our communities, and we don't want to see our mothers in positions where they have to make a decision between their health and their child's health because of a disease that's affecting globally. So I really appreciate you sharing all of your information with us. Thank you so much. I look forward to having more conversations because as we talk, you brought up so many different areas of health that I want to have a conversation with you on. And one in general is really mental health. When it comes to women who are pregnant, like the post and prenatal. So we're going to have that conversation on another day and time. So thank you again. And I hope and I'm praying that your journey and audience, I got to just let you know, Dr. Vernette is going to be in another country with all of this information, all of her experience. And We're going to stay connected because I want to have a podcast from. Can I tell them where you're going to be?
Absolutely, go for it.
I want to tell them that I want to connect with you when you're in Lagos, Africa, and we can have that conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you so much. And listeners, if you have any questions, any information you want to share, you know how to get in touch with us. Until next time, love you.
ACW is sponsored by HpDMS. Self-care through skincare. HpDMS is for everybody.